one of the great questions of life. Why am I here? Why was I born? Why do I exist? What is my purpose in life? Men and women, sadly, search their entire lives trying to find the answers to those questions. Why am I here? Why do I exist? What is my purpose on planet Earth? Why did God allow me to be born to who I was born to? What is my purpose in life? A preacher went into a coffee shop, sat down beside a young man, struck up a conversation with him. The conversation eventually turned towards spiritual things. And the young man says, "Preacher, I just have one question. In life, what really matters? Just summarize life for me. What really matters?" Well, the Bible is the only place you can go to find the answer to why you exist, to find the answer for what your purpose in life is, to find the answer for why God created you and what He created you to do. You're in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Notice verse 5. "And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul and with all thy might." This was the goal of every consecrated Old Testament saint. It was wholehearted devotion to God. It was the consuming passion. It was the driving force of their lives. To love God with every ounce of everything that they had. For these Old Testament saints, knowing God and loving God was not an option. It was an obligation. It was the reason for their existence. You're in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Turn to Deuteronomy chapter 10. Notice verse 12. "And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all His ways, and to love Him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul." What does God want from you? What is your purpose in life? What is the reason for your existence? To love God. To love God with every ounce of your being. To love God with your time. To love God with your talents. To love God with everything that you have. Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 1. "Therefore, thou shalt love the Lord thy God, and keep His charge, and His statutes, and His judgments, and His commandments always." There are no loopholes, no exception clauses. Your job is to love God completely. This is to be the single consuming passion, the single consuming desire of your heart, to love God. We come to the New Testament. A lawyer came to Jesus and said, "Jesus, tell me, what is the great commandment?" Matthew chapter 22, verse 37, Jesus says, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind." Luke chapter 14, verse 26, Jesus said, "If any man come to me and hate not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sisters, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple." Now, he wasn't saying that you have to literally hate your father and your mother and your children and your wife and your brothers and sisters. But he is saying, compared to your love for God, your love for your earthly relationships should be so insignificant that they do not compare to your love for God. Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 22, If any man love not the Lord Jesus Christ, let him be anathema, or let him be accursed. What is life all about? What is your purpose in life? The reason for your existence, the reason you were put here? To love God with all of your being and to worship Him and serve Him forever. Why are you here? You're here to love Jesus. The question you must answer today: do you love Jesus? Now, I'm not talking about a mental exercise. I'm saying, do you love Jesus with all of your heart? That brings us to John 21. Last week we saw in verse 1 through 14 that in the Christian life we have two choices. Will we live for self, or will we live for Christ? Will we live for doing things our way, or will we live to do things God's way? The disciples had tried to do it on their own, and they were met with total failure. Jesus came and said, hey, do it my way, and they did. Now in verses 15 through 17, Jesus goes about restoring Peter. But don't miss the point of the restoration. The whole point of Jesus' discourse with Peter was love. It was all about love. Peter, do you love me? And that is the question that we all must answer. Now you realize that Peter was a go-getter. You realize Peter was not ashamed to show you how he felt. He wasn't bashful. He would just let you know his feelings. John chapter 13, Jesus was asked by Peter, Jesus, where are you going? Jesus responded, where I'm going, you cannot come. Peter says, why? I don't care what anyone else would do, but I will follow you even to death. I will die for you. I will lay down my life for you. But you know what happened in the heat of the moment. There in the face of Jesus' enemies, Peter turned and he fled and he says, I don't know the man. He denied Jesus. Well, since that time, Peter has done nothing. He's just wandered about. Yes, he had seen Jesus, but he had done nothing. Now, Jesus had told the disciples to go to a mountain in Galilee. When Jesus showed up, they weren't in the mountain in Galilee. They were out fishing, and they had fished all night, had caught nothing. Jesus comes and says, hey, have you caught any fish? No, we've caught nothing. He says, cast your nets on the other side and ye shall find. They do, and they catch a great catch of fish. John says, Peter, it is the Lord. Peter jumps out of the boat. He swims to Jesus. All the disciples finally get there. Can you see Peter as he's sitting on the shore? Can you see him wondering what his future would be? He knew Jesus was the life, his only way in life. But what did the future hold for Peter? Notice verse 15. He's sitting there, according to verse 14, sitting by a fire. Now you remember it was by a fire that he denied Jesus. No doubt his head was low. No doubt his heart was hurting. Verse 15. So when they had dined, Jesus saith to Simon Peter, Simon, son of Jonas, can you feel his heart break? He wasn't Simon anymore. When he met Jesus in John chapter 1 verse 42, Jesus says, you shall no more be Simon, you shall be Petros, Peter, the rock. You're not going to be wishy-washy up and down. You are going to be the rock, Peter. Jesus was saying, Peter, are you going to live for yourself? Or are you going to live for me? Verse 15, lovest thou me more than these? Can you see Jesus sweeping his hand across, showing the boats, the nets, all the fish? Peter, do you love me more than all of these? More than your profession? More than all that you've known in your past? More than your career? Peter, you've gone back to fishing again. Peter, you could be quite successful at fishing. You could do pretty well. Peter, do you love me more than you love your business? More than your direction in life? Do you want my direction for your life? Peter, in the inner being of your soul, do you love me? And that's the question for you this morning. In the inner being of your soul, do you truly love Jesus? More than all the stuff in life, more than your business, more than all the things you want to accomplish. Do you love Jesus more than all of those things? Notice verse 15 one more time. Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these? The word love is agapao or agape. It's the highest form of love, the divine kind of love, the supreme kind of love. So Jesus was saying, Peter, do you love me supremely? Do you love me the way I love you? Do you love me with all of your heart? Now, Peter couldn't say, yes, I love you with all of my heart supremely, because his actions just showed he turned on him. He denied him. Obviously, he didn't love Christ like that. Notice how Peter responds. Peter, do you really, really love me? Peter says, yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. Peter appeals to the omniscience of God, to omniscience of Christ. You know all things, and though my actions don't prove it, you know I love thee. But wait a minute. The love is a different kind of love. It's not agape, the supreme kind of love, the divine kind of love. It's the phileo kind of love, the city of brotherly love, the brotherly affection. You know, Jesus, I'm fond of you. Do I love you supremely? Do I love you with a divine kind of love? No. I got to be honest. But I do love you as a brother. I do have strong affection for you. He's a broken man. He's a humbled man. No more the courageous pronouncements. Jesus, my love is not what it should be, but you know the truth. You know I love thee. Now notice on in verse 15. He saith unto him, feed my lambs. Jesus accepts his confession. He didn't say, I'm sorry, Peter. If all you have is phileo, the brotherly affection kind of love, you lose. Next, Thomas, do you love me? No, that's not what he does. He says, Peter, if you're willing to confess that your love is not what it should be, I'm willing to use you. Peter, do you love me? God, Jesus, you know my love is not what it should be, but I do love you. And my friend, the same is true for you today. If you say, I love God, I love Jesus, but it's not what it should be. If you love Jesus, He will use you. Jesus had big plans for Peter. You would think when Peter says, hey, I love you, the case is over, it's done, let's restore Peter. But no, Jesus had big plans for him. And Peter had denied him 3 times, so Jesus was going to have him reaffirm his love 3 times. Notice verse 16. He saith to him again the second time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? There's no more than these in this verse. It's Simon, do you love me? He saith unto him, yea, Lord, thou knowest I love thee. He saith unto him, feed my sheep. Not only my little lambs, but keep on feeding them till they get to be sheep. So he accepts him again. Listen, the basis for God using you in life is your love for him. Verse 17. And he saith unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Now notice this. Peter was grieved. Why would he be grieved? Because he said unto him the third time, Thou lovest me. The word grieve means aching or hurt. He was heartbroken. What's making him grieve? Because Jesus changed the word. Peter, the first time, do you love me in the divine kind, the supreme kind of love? Peter says, no, but I do love you as a brother, the phileo kind of love. I do love you like that. The second time, Jesus, Peter, do you love me with the supreme kind of love? Peter says, no, but I do have great affection for you. I do have brotherly love for you. Jesus comes back the third time. Peter, do you really even have brotherly affection for me? Peter, your actions don't show it. Do you really even have brotherly affection for me? Notice verse 17. Lord, thou knowest all things. You are supreme. You are omniscient. You know it all. Thou knowest that I love thee. Question for you this morning. Do you love Jesus? You say, well, my love's not what it should be, but I do love him. Hey, I don't love him in the divine sense, but I do love him, and I want to love him more. Do you really love him in the brotherly sense? I know it's not what it should be, but do you love him really? You say, well, how can I know if I love Jesus? Jesus gives us 3 evidences of our love for him. The first evidence that we love Jesus is service. It's service. Notice verse 15. He saith unto him, Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee. He saith unto him, Feed my lambs. Verse 16. He saith unto him, Feed my sheep. Verse 17. Jesus saith unto him, Feed my sheep. People who love Jesus are busy serving him. If you're not doing anything for Jesus, do you love him? If you're not serving him, if you're not feeding his sheep, why not? Now listen, you can do without loving, and you're just going to know frustration. But when you love, you have to do. And if you love Jesus, you will serve him. Jesus says, Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep. Manifest your love by feeding my sheep. If we're honest, there are so many people in our world who need love, who need to be fed spiritually. There are neighbors who need a verbal witness. There are people that need visits. There are sheep that need to be fed. And Jesus says, if you love me, Peter, don't be moping around. Don't be saying, well, I wonder if I'll do anything. I'm just here to exist. No, Peter, if you love me, feed my sheep. So my question for you this morning, do you love Jesus? If you do, you'll be serving him. You're not just going to be a pew sitter, just there to sit. Hey, I'm not here to serve, I'm just here to spectate. Hey, I am a professional criticizer. I'm here just to say, uh-oh, choir messed up today. Uh-oh, that preacher, he was just off today. Hey, I'm just here as a spectator. Not if you love Jesus, you're not. If you truly love Jesus, you're going to want to serve him. You're going to go about feeding his sheep. You don't have to turn there. Let me read the verse to you. Peter got this truth, and he never got over it. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 12. Peter's talking. Wherefore I will not be negligent to put you always in remembrance of these things. He says, I'm not going to be guilty. I'm not going to be held to charge for not feeding you, for not putting in remembrance of these things. I'm not going to be negligent for not feeding you. But listen on. Though ye know him, and be established in the present truth, yea, I think it meet, as long as I am in this tabernacle, to stir you up by putting you in remembrance. Peter says, hey, I'm not going to be negligent that I don't feed you spiritually. Hey, I know you know it. I know you've been trained up in it, but you need to hear it again because it's my job to feed his sheep and to feed his sheep and to feed his sheep. He spent the rest of his life feeding Christ's sheep. And so it is with you. You say, well, I'm not a preacher. Yeah, but there are a lot of people that need ministry. A lot of people that need care. A lot of people that need concern. That you have a responsibility not just to sit. If you love Jesus, you serve. 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. Do you wonder what made Paul do all that he did? I mean, Paul was beaten. When he was in Philippi, they beat him. They threw him in prison. He was chained in the inner prison. He was shipwrecked. He was stoned and left for dead. What made Paul do all that he did? Can I tell you his testimony? 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14. For the love of Christ constraineth us. He says, I do all that I do because I love Jesus. Now listen, don't miss the point. I'm not saying y'all need to do. I'm saying you need to love Jesus supremely. You need to love Jesus. And when you love Jesus, one of the evidences, you'll serve him. The second evidence, you'll be surrendered to him. Notice verse 18. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself and walkest whither thou wouldest. Peter, when you were young, you did your own thing. You put your own clothes on. You went where you wanted to go, when you wanted to go there. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands. Now that statement, it speaks of crucifixion. Jesus is predicting that, Peter, you're going to be crucified. Now, the only way Peter could be crucified if he was surrendered. Peter, when you were young, you just did your own thing. You were cutting off people's ears. You were just like a loose cannon doing your own thing. But when you're old, when you're more mature, you're going to be surrendered. You're going to be surrendered to me. You say, how do you know that it's talking about crucifixion? Look at verse 19. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. This is a message from Jesus to Peter. Peter, I want you to be a minister for me. I want you to live a life of sacrifice. There's going to be a lot of toiling. There's going to be some times when you're just worn out. There's going to be some times when you're just weary and well-doing. Peter, do you love me? If you do, you'll serve me. But secondly, you'll be surrendered to me. You'll do when you don't feel like doing. You'll go when you don't feel like going. You will serve those who you don't feel like serving. Peter, if you love me, you'll be surrendered to me. Not your will, but my will. Now think about it. Peter must have been ecstatic when Jesus says, Peter, you're going to die for me. Because Peter had boasted, Lord, I will lay down my life. I will die for you. And in the heat of the moment, he didn't do it. In the heat of the moment, he denied Christ. Jesus says, Peter, when you are old, having lived a life of surrender, you're going to die for me. You're going to lay down your life for me. And Peter, you're going to do it. The only reason he was able to do it at death, because he had done it in life. My question for you this morning, do you love Jesus? If you love Jesus, you're surrendered to him. Jesus, is not my will for my life. Hey, I feel like you've called me to this vocation, but if you want to change my vocation, I'm here just surrendered to you. Jesus, it's not who I want to marry, it's who you want me to marry. Hey, it's not my will, what I want to do today or this week or this summer. It's your will. I am surrendered. Came to the end of his life. Peter's ready to be crucified. They come and they say, we're going to crucify you. He doesn't deny Jesus this time. No. He says, I'm not worthy to be crucified the way he was crucified. I am nothing compared to my Savior. You crucify me upside down. And they did. Why? Because he was surrendered. Do you know why you're here in life? You're here in life to love Jesus with all of your heart. You were created to love God. When you do, one of the evidences, you'll serve him. God, I'm here to serve you. Any capacity, the public capacities that are seen and appreciated, or the capacities that no one ever sees, the situations that no one ever praises. I'm not serving men. Jesus, I'm serving you with my vocation. I'm surrendered to you with my money. I'm surrendered to you with my time. I'm surrendered to you with my children. One of the evidences is serving. The second evidence is surrender. The third one is submission. Now notice verse 19. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said unto him, follow me. You'll never get a more simple command than that. The Christian life is about following Jesus, going wherever he leads, doing whatever he desires, being whatever he wants you to be. It's a life of yielding and obedience. God, I'm submissive to you. I'm going to follow you. Romans chapter 1, verse 1. Philippians chapter 1, verse 1. Titus chapter 1, verse 1. Paul begins all three of those books. Paul, a servant of Jesus Christ. Hey, I'm just here to serve. I'm just here to do what you want me to do. I am submissive. Now, so many times we get our eyes on people and we mess up. We miss out in life because we put our eyes on people. That happened to Peter. It's quite possible Jesus and Peter had gone for a walk. They turn around and they come back and Peter sees John. And Peter says, Jesus. Now think about it. He's having this great discourse with Jesus. They're talking about loving. They're talking about serving. What a time. Peter sees old John and says, Jesus, what about John? What's your plan for John and his life? Verse 21. Peter seeth him, saith to Jesus, Lord, what shall this man do? Jesus saith unto him, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. Jesus says, Peter, don't get your eyes on people, because people will disappoint you. People are going to fail. People are going to fall. Don't put your eyes on people. Put your eyes on me and simply follow me. My question this morning, do you love Jesus? Are you serving him? Are you surrendered to him? Are you submissive to him? Lord, wherever you lead, I'll go. Wherever you lead, I'll go. I'll follow you wherever, Lord. Wherever you lead, I'll go. I would love to interview Peter right at the end of his life. Facing execution, I have just one question for Peter. Peter, why were you born? Why are you here? What was your reason for existence in this life? I believe Peter would say, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. When you love Jesus, you'll serve him. You'll be surrendered to him, and you'll be submissive to him. My question for you, do you love Jesus?